There's a story I often tell my students. A man once asked Epictetus, "How do I keep my peace when people insult me?" Epictetus smiled and said, "That depends on what you think the insult means." That line carries the whole secret of emotional freedom. It's not the insult, not the event, not the words. It's your first reaction to them that builds your suffering. I once had a patient, a retired firefighter, who told me that when someone cut him off in traffic, he used to slam the horn and shout until his voice went hoarse. He said it made him feel strong. But one day, his young granddaughter was in the back seat. She looked at him and quietly asked, "Grandpa, why are you mad at someone we'll never see again?" He told me that moment embarrassed him more deeply than any lecture ever could. "I realized," he said, "that I wasn't angry at the driver. I was angry at how easily I could still be controlled." That's the truth of it. The moment we react, we hand our power to the thing we hate. The Stoics called this instant prohairesis, our capacity to choose our inner response. Everything outside that is not up to us. When we don't pause, we let impulse rule. The blood rushes, the ego swells, and before we know it, we've spoken words that cannot be unsaid. Marcus Aurelius warned himself of this very trap. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. To not react is not to be cold or numb. It's to choose clarity over chaos. Imagine you're standing by a still pond. Someone throws a rock into it. If the surface is calm, you can see every ripple clearly. If you keep stirring the water, you see nothing but distortion. Most people spend their lives stirring. So, how do you stop? You train for it, like a muscle. The next time someone interrupts you, breathe. When someone questions your worth, pause before the ego answers for you. The silence between stimulus and response, that tiny, invisible space, is where peace begins.
Epictetus used to say, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The first reaction is the enemy because it's rarely you. It's your fear, your pride, your insecurity trying to grab the wheel. I've seen people lose decades of friendship over a few seconds of pride. I've also seen others rebuild entire lives by learning to hold their tongue for just one moment. That's all it takes. One moment of awareness before you respond. So, if you want to practice the Stoic skill that changes everything, begin with this. Guard the space before your first reaction. When someone provokes you, let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them face their own noise while you remain still. Because that stillness, that quiet refusal to be dragged, is not weakness. It's mastery. And tell me in the comments, when was the last time you caught yourself before reacting, and it changed the outcome completely? If this message speaks to you, remember, Stoic strength begins not in what you do, but in what you refuse to do. Like, subscribe, and join me in the next part, where we'll explore how silence itself becomes your greatest form of power. Part 2. The discipline of the pause. There's a saying I repeat to myself before I speak in anger. If you can pause, you can choose. If you can't pause, you're being ruled. We think discipline means waking up early, working hard, or following strict habits, but the deepest discipline is invisible. It happens in that brief, trembling second when your emotions want to take control, and you simply don't let them. A friend of mine, a former soldier, once told me about the hardest lesson he ever learned, not on the battlefield, but at home. After his service, he struggled with his temper. Every loud sound, every argument triggered a storm. One night, his teenage son shouted, "You're always angry. You don't even listen." He said that for a second, he wanted to shout back, to show who was right. But instead, something in him softened. He turned and walked outside. He stood in the dark for 10 minutes, just breathing. When he came back, he said only one thing. "You're right.
I don't listen enough. That night, he told me, was the first real peace he'd felt in years. That's the discipline of the pause. It's not passive, it's powerful. You're not ignoring the emotion, you're observing it. You're saying to yourself, here's anger, here's pride, here's fear. And by naming it, you rob it of its power. Seneca once wrote, "Anger, if not restrained, is more destructive than any enemy." But notice his wording, restrained, not repressed. The Stoics didn't believe in burying emotions. They believed in guiding them, like a rider guiding a wild horse, calm but firm. In that pause, you become the rider again. When you react, life drives you. When you pause, you drive life. Sometimes I ask my students to practice something simple before responding to anything that stirs them. A harsh email, a rude comment, a piece of bad news. Wait for 2 breaths, not 1, 2. Most of them come back after a week and say, "It felt strange, but lighter, like I didn't carry other people's chaos inside me." You see, the pause isn't just about holding back anger. It's a doorway to freedom. Because once you realize that your peace doesn't depend on anyone else's behavior, you stop being a puppet. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." That's not coldness, it's maturity. The pause helps you measure what's truly worth your energy. Next time you feel the urge to prove, defend, or retaliate, pause and ask, what am I protecting? My peace or my pride? That question alone can change the whole tone of your life. Remember, wisdom doesn't shout, it breathes. Strength doesn't rush, it waits. So if you want to master the Stoic skill that changes everything, train in this simple art, the art of pausing before you react. Because in that stillness, you stop being controlled by emotion and start choosing who you truly want to be. If this lesson resonates with you, leave a comment. What's one situation this week where you could practice the pause? And don't forget to like and subscribe. In the next part, we'll explore how not reacting isn't silence alone, but a way to communicate power without words. Part 3. Power in silence. Most people mistake silence for weakness. But silence, the kind born of awareness, not avoidance, is one of the most commanding forces a human can wield. There's a kind of silence that shrinks the room, makes others lean in. It's the silence of someone who doesn't need to prove anything. You can feel it when they speak slowly, or not at all, while everyone else rushes to defend their pride. That stillness unsettles people, because it exposes the noise in them. I remember once sitting with a man whose wife had just left him. He was devastated, trembling with disbelief. "I said everything I could," he told me. "I begged, I explained, I argued." I asked him gently, "Did you ever stop talking? Just to listen?" He paused. Then he shook his head. "No," he said. "I was too busy trying to make her understand." That's the trap. We fill silence because we fear what it might reveal. But sometimes silence says exactly what needs to be said. I refuse to fight for what no longer deserves my peace. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." When others shout, he wrote in his journal instead. When others schemed, he meditated. He understood something most people never do. Silence isn't withdrawal, it's strategy. You see, every outburst costs you something: energy, dignity, presence. Every moment you stay silent instead of reacting is like saving a coin in a bank of power. One day, you'll need that power, not to dominate others, but to stand calm in a storm. I once worked with a CEO who was constantly attacked online. Rumors, accusations, personal insults. Every week, a new wave. One day I asked him, "How do you stay so composed?" He smiled and said, Because I learned the difference between noise and truth. Noise fades. Truth stays. He never replied to the critics. He just kept doing the work. 2 years later, most of those voices were gone. His integrity wasn't loud, but it was unbreakable. That's what silence builds. Credibility. And credibility, once earned, doesn't need to argue. But let's be clear. Stoic silence isn't about bottling emotion or pretending nothing hurts. It's about letting pain pass through without letting it poison your response. Like a tree standing through wind, bending, but not breaking. The next time you're accused unjustly, or someone tries to bait you, don't rush to explain. Look them in the eye, breathe, and let silence do the talking. Your calmness will unsettle them more than any defense ever could. In that moment, you'll understand what Epictetus meant when he said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond that matters." So, learn to hold silence not as a void, but as a shield. It's not emptiness. It's full of strength, restraint, and meaning. If this idea speaks to you, leave a comment. Have you ever used silence to end a conflict or protect your peace? And remember to like and subscribe, because in the next part, we'll explore what happens inside you when you stop reacting, the deep rewiring of mind and soul that begins once you no longer need to win every battle. Part 4. The inner shift, from reaction to response. There's a quiet transformation that happens when you stop reacting. Something deep inside begins to rearrange itself. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. But one day, you realize the same things that used to shake you no longer have the same grip. A woman once told me she used to spend hours replaying conversations in her head, every slight, every criticism, every moment she wished she'd said something. But after practicing what she called Stoic stillness, she said something remarkable. I didn't stop caring. I just stopped bleeding energy where it wasn't welcome. That's the heart of it. When you stop reacting, you don't become indifferent. You become selective. You stop giving your peace away to every passing moment. You stop letting small things make you small. Modern neuroscience actually backs this up. When we react impulsively, the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm, hijacks us. But when we pause, the prefrontal cortex steps in. The pause literally rewires the brain, replacing reactivity with control. Marcus Aurelius didn't have MRI scans, but he understood this long before science caught up. The mind adapts and converts to its own purpose, the obstacle to our acting. Every time you hold that pause, you're building a new kind of strength, not the hard, brittle kind that breaks under pressure, but the flexible kind that bends and endures. I remember a man I coached years ago. He was always angry at his colleagues, convinced they disrespected him. One day I asked him, "What if they never change? What if your peace depends only on you?" He looked stunned. "Then I've been fighting ghosts," he said. Exactly. Most of our battles are against ghosts, things we can't control, things that live only in our interpretations. When you stop reacting, you begin to see that truth. You start to observe life as it is, not as your ego paints it. You don't get lost in stories like, "They did this to me," or "I deserve better." Instead, you ask, "What does this moment require from me?" Calm, action, or silence? That's what Stoicism trains you to do, to replace reaction with reflection, to let thought step in where emotion once ruled. This inner shift doesn't make life easier. Pain still comes, loss still hurts, but you become less fragile in the face of it. You stop being a victim of moods. You become the calm observer, guiding yourself through storms with quiet authority. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When you stop reacting, you see how much of your suffering was imagined, built from overthinking, judgment, pride. You start to taste freedom. So tonight, When something irritates you, a delay, a rude word, a memory, don't rush to fix or fight it. Just watch. Breathe. Let it unfold without feeding it. That's how peace begins. Not with control, but with awareness. If this speaks to you, leave a comment. What's one small thing you've stopped reacting to? And how has it changed your peace? And remember to like and subscribe. In the next part, we'll explore the quiet reward of non-reaction. How it earns you respect, stability, and a dignity that no one can take away. Part 5. The quiet dignity of self-control. There's a kind of respect you can't demand. You have to embody it. It's the kind that comes from self-control. Not the kind that's loud or dramatic, but the kind that others feel in your presence, even when you say nothing. People who can't control their emotions often lose the very power they're trying to prove. But those who can remain calm when the world is loud, they command a different kind of authority, one born from mastery, not dominance. I remember an old neighbor named Richard. He was in his late 60s, a retired teacher who used to sit on his porch every evening with a small cup of tea. The local kids sometimes mocked him. Loud music, careless jokes, but he never responded. He'd just smile faintly, sip his tea, and return to his book. One evening I asked him why he never reacted. He looked at me and said, "Because they only win if I stop being me." I never forgot that. That's what Stoicism teaches. Your dignity isn't built by how the world treats you, but by how you treat yourself in response. Every reaction you withhold, every emotion you guide instead of letting it rule you, that's you polishing your character. There's a strange truth here. Restraint looks invisible, but it radiates power. People notice when you don't take the bait. They feel your calmness, and deep down, they trust it. They might not say it out loud, but they respect it. Because calmness feels safe in a world addicted to noise. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, lived surrounded by scheming politicians and constant pressure. Yet in his writings, you never hear outrage, only reflection. He wrote, "If anyone can show me that I am wrong, I will gladly change, for I seek the truth, not victory." That's the essence of self-control, preferring truth over pride. And here's something beautiful. The more you practice not reacting, the more your silence starts to speak for you. People learn that you can't be easily provoked, that you won't feed gossip or chaos, and that makes them adjust their tone around you. You teach them how to treat you, not through confrontation, but through composure. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." But bravery isn't just about facing danger. It's about refusing to be enslaved by your emotions. When you master yourself, you stop being at the mercy of others. Their words may sting, but they don't sink. Their moods may shift, but your foundation stands. So when someone tries to provoke you, remember Richard and his tea. Let them make noise. Your silence will outlast it. Let them judge. Your peace will outshine it. That's the quiet dignity of self-control. You win not by overpowering others, but by mastering yourself. If this resonates, share in the comments. What's one situation where staying calm gave you more power than reacting ever could? And if you're finding value in these lessons, like and subscribe. Because in the next and final part, we'll talk about what this mastery leads to. The kind of freedom that no circumstance, no person, and no emotion can take away. Part 6. The freedom beyond reaction. There's a moment, after years of learning not to react, when something inside you finally settles. You stop bracing for every insult. You stop chasing every misunderstanding. You realize you no longer need to prove your worth because peace has become your proof. This is what the Stoics meant by freedom. Not political freedom, not financial, but the kind that begins in the mind, when no one's words, moods, or opinions can shake your center. A friend of mine, a surgeon, once told me that after a decade in the operating room, his hands no longer trembled when something went wrong. Not because the situations became easier, but because he became calmer. At some point, he said, you stop reacting to the emergency and start responding to the reality. That's what inner freedom feels like. Life still moves fast, but you don't. The storm still comes, but you don't get swept up in it. When you stop reacting, you start choosing. You choose when to speak. You choose what deserves your energy. You choose which battles are even real. And that choice, that tiny space between stimulus and response, is where your power lives. Epictetus, who was once a slave, understood this more than anyone. He couldn't control his master, his conditions, or even his own body. But he learned that freedom doesn't begin outside. It begins with mastery over the self. No one is free, he said, who is not master of himself. When you live like this, something miraculous happens. You stop seeing people as enemies or obstacles. You start seeing them as teachers. The rude driver becomes a test of patience. The critic becomes a mirror. The pain becomes your instructor in resilience. Every irritation that once ruled you becomes an invitation to rise above yourself. That's how non-reaction transforms from discipline into liberation. You stop being controlled by the world because you finally control how you meet it. There's an old Stoic saying, "A fire turns everything thrown into it into flame." That's the spirit of this skill. To take whatever life throws at you and use it to burn brighter, not bitter. So when someone tries to provoke you, pause. When life disappoints you, breathe. When everything in you wants to fight, be still. Because silence is not surrender. It's the highest form of self-respect. And that's the secret the Stoics discovered long ago. When you master the art of not reacting, you don't become cold. You become free. If this message touched you, take a moment to reflect in the comments. What's one situation where choosing calm changed everything for you? And if this journey through Stoic wisdom has resonated, like, share, and subscribe, because peace, like wisdom, grows stronger when it's shared. Until next time, remember, life is short, emotions are fleeting, and the one thing always within your control is how you respond.